Okay, the Brisbane Broncos look likely to get the wooden spoon. They have to pull something out of the hat against North Queensland next week. But the situation with Brisbane, I think we have to go back in time a little bit with what's gone wrong in the 2020 season. Um, it predates Seabold's tenure as coach. It goes back to when Wayne Bennett was reappointed. And I think you can look back at the 2015 Grand Final onwards with the issues that are besetting the Broncos right now. Player recruitment is questionable. The way they handled Wayne Bennett's departure and Anthony Seibold's appointment was a mess. The length of contract given to Seibold backfired this season. But yes, you have to look at the end of the Wayne Bennett era and some players retiring, other players moving on and not being adequately replaced in the recruitment department and the scouting department. And you could look at players they've let go in reserve grade and junior grades and on the periphery of their squad who've gone on to other NRL teams or overseas to the Super League and have done very, very well and are winning matches, winning grand finals, winning silverware, playing rep football, and they were let go by Brisbane. And you can go back as far as Cameron Smith for that, but there's been a whole host of others. The fact that this season they couldn't keep hold of David Fifita and he goes to Gold Coast. So they're not even enticing players to stay and rebuild the playing squad with. And David Fifita is, well, a superstar forward. And he has a lot of potential. He's had a few injuries this season. He went off injured in the game tonight, but he has a lot of potential with David Fifita. And the fact that the Broncos, let him go tells you where the club's at. It does tell you a lot about the situation at the club. The fact that Staggs, Farnsworth, and Carrigan have been their best players this season, and they're three young guys, all under the age of 23, is deeply troubling as well. You're relying on an overseas player who's young, from England, and two young guys who to carry this team. They've been their three best players all season. Milford is just, we don't know what, he's on big money and he's not performing. He's regularly unfit. Question marks over his attitude. Darius Boyd, midway through the season, decided to leave the leadership group as the most senior player in that squad. That is, again, quite disappointing from a player of his quality. And he has been, well, I think his legs ran out on him a couple of seasons ago. There's been a lot of criticism saying he should have retired two years ago when Wayne Bennett moved on. But he's played on for 2 more years and it hasn't worked out. It hasn't benefited the team. There's been question marks about his defensive abilities. They've played him in different positions, including in the halves and in the centres, which is a head scratcher because he's a fullback or a winger. Brodie Croft has not really settled this season. He's been in and out of the side. There's been injuries there. He was injured in training in the build-up to the game this week. That's a concern. Discipline of players like Pangai off the field with multiple lockdown breaches and bubble breaches, which the NRL had fought so hard to get the game back on. They almost risked the integrity of the competition going forward. Multiple breaches by multiple players. Pangai with a series of them. So off-field distractions have been quite damaging for the club. And the way they handled Seibold's departure as well was an absolute mess from the moment there were concerns about his future and the concerns about how the team were playing. That was handled very, very badly. And the players they brought in to help out this season, Ben Teo and Isaac Luke, they're both in their mid-30s. And Ben Teo has been playing rugby union for 6 years and has had a fair few injuries. That in itself screams panic. There is no new coach announced for next season, no new players signed for next season. There are players coming off on contract in 2021. I think it's about 7 to 9 players in around the first team squad coming off contract. So they're going to have a difficult time. It doesn't matter who comes in. The coach who comes in, be it Paul Green, Kevin Walters, Sean Wayne, another outsider could be named. They're going to have to try and work out with the salary cap to re-sign a lot of these players at the end of next season or lose them. And that would make any kind of rebuild or retooling or refreshing or whatever you want to call it even harder if you're possibly going to lose up to 9 players off contract. That is not a good situation to be in. So roster management is also a disaster. You look at the amount of money they're paying Milford, that is a head scratcher. They've lost David Fafita. He's moved on. That in itself, again, is a head scratcher. So things like this, with like Fafita moving on, that tells you things are not all well behind the scenes. Win or lose, that things aren't going well, and that players don't want to play there. And this is a team that is the most valuable team in rugby league, most profitable team in rugby league, and the most successful team in the modern rugby league era in Australia. And there is no long-term plan. The boardroom is a mess. The CEO is on the way out, so there's no CEO appointment yet, no new coach appointment yet, no new players yet. But these issues stem back from when Wayne Bennett was reappointed as coach in the build-up to the grand final in 2015. So these issues are long-standing, and it's going to take a long time, I think, to fix them. And depending on how results go next weekend, they could get their first wooden spoon in history. You just look at their for and against record for points. It's not a good read if you're a Broncos fan. Minus 340 odd against. Canterbury and North Queensland have much better for and against records. And if Canterbury win against Penrith, it doesn't matter what the Broncos do. The Broncos' for and against record kills them. It doesn't matter if they beat the Cowboys or not. They are in trouble. And while the Cowboys themselves haven't had a great season, only winning 4 games, they've still won more games than Brisbane and more games since lockdown than Brisbane. Brisbane have only won 1 game since the resumption of play on round 3, back on May 28th. 1 game in 17 rounds of football. 1 game in 17. That record is shocking. They've lost 16 games and won 1 since the resumption of play. And if you discount the first 2 games of the season, let's say the NRL said we're not counting the first 2 rounds, we're going to start the season on May 28th and have a shortened season, they would only have 2 points. And they would be getting the wooden spoon, and they would have actually received the wooden spoon a couple of weeks ago. That tells you where they are. And you could say, the Seabold era was a mess. Yeah, it was. He did inherit a squad that needed a refresh and needed fresh blood coming in, and he did debut a lot of players, and you can give him credit for that. But the structural problems were in place from when Bennett left. And there were warning signs there, and the way they handled the Bennett departure and Seabold's arrival was a mess. So it doesn't matter if Paul Green or Kevin Walters or Sean Wayne comes in, they're going to have a very tough task to turn this team around. And whether they make finals football next year, which looks highly unlikely or not, whoever comes in, they're going to have a very tough first season as coach. Because until they name a coach, recruitment has just ground to a halt. And with no reserve grade, you can't judge how players are doing at the lower levels to assess their development. So Brisbane are in real trouble. But I'm going to leave that there. How do you fix it? Who knows? They need to completely look at how the board is structured, how the club is run off the field. They need to look at their recruitment. They need to look at their player development, their scouting, and they need to ask themselves why a player like David Fafita is leaving to go to Gold Coast down the road. You have to ask those questions. But I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.